Animal Crossing New Leaf is one of the most beloved games in a beloved Nintendo franchise. Its winning combination of life simulation, virtual interior design, and neighborly animals has captivated millions around the world. And it's the last game that you'd think could be speedrun. After all, time passes in New Leaf at the same rate as the real world. Short of changing the clock on your 3DS, there's no way to advance more quickly through the game. And even if you mess with the clock, New Leaf doesn't really have an end goal. There's no final boss to beat or difficult dungeons to test your skill on. The game just keeps going, month after month, year after year. So how do you speedrun New Leaf? You change the rules of the game. See, where the goal of many runners in other games is to beat an entire game as quickly as possible, New Leaf speedrunners pick individual accomplishments, such as collecting a certain golden tool, and strive for speed excellence in that category alone. You may not be able to ever definitively complete New Leaf, but you can trigger the game credits as fast as possible. It's discrete categories like this that make New Leaf viable as a speedrun. New Leaf has several categories for speedrunning, some straightforward, like paying off all debts, and some whimsical, like beating Snowman Bingo. But the one that's inspired the most runs, the one that inspired an epic rivalry, is First Debt. This category showcases the player's ability to complete the opening section of the game as fast as possible. It requires a tremendous amount of luck and a lot of patience. But the speedrunners who've braved the difficulty have taken the game in a completely different direction than its developers originally intended. And, in the process, they've delivered a shot of adrenaline to this usually slow-paced game. Welcome to the world record history of Animal Crossing New Leaf First Debt. The origins of a particular speedrunning community are often difficult to pinpoint, but it appears that the first person to ever record their run in the First Debt category was Golderzoa on July 28, 2014, with a time of 12 minutes, 7 seconds. The video he posted onto YouTube is low quality, but it serves as proof that he was the first. It also established Golderzoa's tendency to not speak during his speedruns. For the next year, Golderzoa was the only one on the leaderboard. But his first challenger arose in July 2015, when MagEfmer got a 12:48. This was over 40 seconds behind Golderzoa. However, MagEfmer quickly improved over the next few days, first with an 11:07, then a 10:08, and finally a 9:57 for the first sub-10 world record in New Leaf's short history. Unfortunately, as with many runs from the early days of this category, there is no video evidence of MagEfmer's achievement. However, he does have other speedruns on his YouTube channel, some of which are for other Animal Crossing titles, so it seems likely that these runs are legitimate. MagEfmer's reign on the leaderboard was brief, as Golderzoa took his record back on September 21st with a 9:33. 6 days after that, a new challenger appeared, Sonic Brawler, who scored a 9:21 to lower the record by 12 seconds, and who also had no video evidence for his time. After this came Taste the Painbow, who set his 11:13 personal best, or PB, while he was in class. And the next runner after him was Alpharad, the YouTube personality who had not yet become the views juggernaut that he is today. In fact, he was working on speedrunning quite a few games around this time. He was pretty good at New Leaf too, so good that he set a new world record of 9:19 on May 16, 2016. Alpharad's run incorporates a lot of techniques that would become standard for New Leaf speedrunning, so let's take a look at it in more depth. New Leaf First Debt has a sort of grammar for how its runs are performed. There's an opening section of the game where Rover helps the player choose their name and what kind of town they'll live in. Then the player takes a train ride into their town. Which side of the map they enter from can increase their runtime depending on whether the train station is located on the left or right side of the town. Once the player exits the train, they're greeted by the villagers and appointed as the new mayor. They choose where their house will be located and are formally installed as a mayor in the tree ceremony. Finally, they buy a shovel, then use it to get cash out of the money rock, to pay off the first debt. Also, most runners use the Japanese version of the game because text scrolls faster and it does away with a few text sections. What I've just explained sounds simple, and parts of the run certainly are. But there are a few key elements that make or break a run. The first decision that Alpharad had to make in this run was which map to choose. New Leaf lets you choose the general layout of your future town from 4 different options before you arrive. This is important because where the town hall and town tree locations are determines how much time the player has to spend moving back and forth between objectives. You want both to be as close to the main street entrance as possible because Tom Nook, the person to whom you pay your debt, is located on Main Street. In Alpharad's case, he was presented with some fairly mediocre options by Rover, and ended up choosing a layout with the town hall near the center of the map. After exiting the train to his town, which was known as G, Alpharad had to scroll through a lot of text as quickly as he could. Then it was off to Tom Nook to obtain a tent to live in. On the way there, Alpharad hit the second key part of New Leaf Run: perfect fruit. All Animal Crossing games prominently feature fruit which can be harvested from trees and sold for a certain amount of money. In New Leaf, trees will sometimes generate perfect fruit, which is a golden variety of a particular fruit that sells for much more cash. Getting one perfect fruit and one regular fruit nets enough money to buy the shovel. However, if the player can only find regular fruit, they are required to sell 6 of them, not to mention the socks off their villagers' feet. So perfect fruit is critical to a competitive run. Fortunately for Alpharad, he was able to find a perfect fruit with minimal searching on the way to Tom Nook's store. After this, the run became a text-scrolling grind until the tree ceremony was over, at which point Alpharad headed for Main Street again to pick up the shovel. He was fast, but wasted a little time looking for additional backup money rocks. He bought the shovel, headed for the first rock he saw, and to the surprise of Alpharad and everyone watching on Twitch, it was the money rock. A little over a minute later, Alpharad had himself a shiny new world record. Now, some people thought that Alpharad was going to have the record forever because of the relative obscurity of the category. But as veteran speedrunners will tell you, no speedrunning record is ever safe. Somebody figures out a new glitch, or a new strategy, or some famous speedrunner comes along to try for a top time, and suddenly the record's been lowered again. However, few would have predicted how long Alpharad's record would stand. 10 days. And, as usual, it was Golderzoa who took it back. His first revenge record was only a second faster. But his second one, a 9:02 on May 19th, blew away Alpharad's time and brought the category very close to a sub 9. Surely it was only a matter of time until Golderzoa pushed the record even farther, right? But for whatever reason, no sub 9 came. Instead, more runners introduced themselves to the leaderboards. Orchestra, who pioneered the All Debts run in the Japanese version of New Leaf around this time, submitted a respectable 953 a month after Golderzoa's world record. And the community gained several international participants over the next few months. Death Slap, BEN from Hungary, and a pair of Australians. One, CamZebro21, lowered his PB by 4 minutes in one epic day of running. His ultimate 923 was competitive and placed him within striking distance of the world record, but he walked away and never submitted another time. The other, Dinzy, submitted times in 2017 and 2019 that ultimately got them a 10th place finish on the current leaderboard. But February 2017 brought the advent of a new challenger, somebody who was ready to go head-to-head with Golderzoa. His name was Megamaster X. Megamaster X originally started running this game in February 2017 as part of a 12-hour challenge, an event in which a player is tasked with learning a particular speedrun over an entire day. Megamaster X's challenge run didn't go too well. He didn't get perfect fruit and ended up collecting 8 peaches to pay for the shovel. Making things worse, he got the money rock on his second try instead of his first. It all added up to a 10:25 run, almost a minute and a half behind the world record. But, unlike previous runners, Megamaster X stuck with it. Over the next 4 months, he worked hard and began to lower his time, first to 10:10, then to 9:26 and 9:15. He even set a PB of 9:11 at the Buckeye Speed Bash on June 12th, while giving a masterclass in New Leaf speedrunning to the attendees.
We have 2 cats in this town. What a time to be alive. There are 2 rocks near here, so we've seen it.
Finally, in late June, he was ready to make his move on the world record. Megamaster X's June 28th run got off to a fast start. He quickly chose the first map in the run's opening section, giving him a commanding 11-second lead. He managed to maintain his lead through the tree ceremony in spite of accidentally talking to Tom Nook. Ominously, however, no perfect fruit appeared through that segment of the run. It looked like Megamaster X would have to employ the backup 6 peaches and a pair of socks strategy that he had used to get the 911 at Buckeye Speed Bash. But the patron saint of speedrunners, Saint Luck herself, smiled on Megamaster X, who found a perfect peach immediately adjacent to the ceremony site after it concluded. And then he got a first-try money rock conveniently located near the main street entrance. He ran as fast as he could to Tom Nook to pay off the first debt, and hoped for the best. After he'd finished scrolling through the seemingly endless text, Megamaster X's villager ran outside and the run was over. He'd done it in less than 9 minutes.
I got a world record! Oh my god! Sub 9! Holy... I got world record! Holy moly!
But what Megamaster X did next showed the competitive spirit that had brought him to the pinnacle of New Leaf speedrunning. He kept grinding to bring his time lower. And why not? While his 8:59 was game-changing, it was admittedly only 3 seconds better than Golderzoa's 9:02. It wasn't the kind of definitive top time that Golderzoa had posted after Magefmer and Alpharad's world records. Megamaster X was going to put his definitive stamp on the record book if he could, but there was one person standing in his way. It was Golderzoa, of course. Golderzoa, now simply going by GZ, had quickly put an end to Magefmer and Alpharad's reigns on the first at leaderboards, and it seemed likely that he'd do the same to Megamaster X. Their paths collided on January 20th, 2018. GZ struck first with an 8:51, which easily beat the previous world record of 8:59 by a full 8 seconds. It was a typical GZ performance, but it had taken him over 6 months to get the record instead of the short amounts of time from beforehand. Incredibly, on only his 4th attempt of the day, Megamaster X took the record back with an 8:46, lowering his previous best by 13 seconds and eclipsing GZ's mark by 5 seconds. How did he do it? Well, it wasn't like his 8:59 run at all. In fact, Megamaster X ended up choosing the 4th out of 4 maps, and even that one wasn't ideal, with the sapling site being a fair distance from the entrance to Main Street. Plus, the train entered the town from the right side of the screen when the train station was on the left. It added up to a 7-second deficit. However, Megamaster X wasted a fair amount of time looking for perfect fruit and potential money rocks in his previous run. At this time, his movement was much more precise during the sapling section, enough for him to make up 17 seconds and take a commanding lead. Unfortunately, he fell 26 seconds behind thanks to a subpar shovel section and difficulty finding perfect fruit. It wasn't looking good. But then Megamaster X got the money rock again right next to the Main Street entrance. What's more, the money rock had spawned right next to his tent so that he didn't even need to dig holes to brace himself against the rock. Placing the tent next to the money rock in order to save a few seconds was a strategy developed by GZ, and Megamaster X used it to his advantage. It was an incredible turn of events that gave him a gold split, which is what speedrunners call their fastest time ever on a particular run section. It was stunning, it was legendary, and it was an 8:46 world record. After this, Megamaster X stepped away from speedrunning, and to date he hasn't submitted any more times on the leaderboards. GZ kept trying for another week, but only managed to bring his PB down to an 8:50, which was still 4 seconds behind the record. And with that, first at speedruns entered a slowdown period. Nobody submitted any times for a few months until Gamingland, a player from the small African island nation of Sao Tome and Principe, got onto the leaderboards in August. But a couple of weeks later, somebody set a new world record. It wasn't Megamaster X, and it wasn't GZ. It was a new runner named Lilat R, who's most famous for his complete domination of the Star Fox 64 leaderboards. Lilat R had been dabbling in this category since 2017, but he found another gear in September 2018. On September 6th, his PB was a 914. On September 7th, he'd set a world record of 845, just a second ahead of Megamaster X. And surprisingly, he went unchallenged by anyone else until he beat his own record in February 2019 with an 839. And then it was all GZ. He set an 848 PB in March, but laid low for a few months. When he returned in July, it was with a game-changing strategy, using the Korean version of New Leaf. I mentioned earlier that serious speedrunners generally use the Japanese version of New Leaf, because they can get through the text-scrolling sections of the run more quickly. However, at some point, it was discovered that the Korean version was even faster at scrolling, and used less text. So, GZ introduced it into his runs, and it changed everything. On July 20th, he lowered his PB to 840, then set a world record with an 826. But he wasn't finished trying, and he kept playing the next day. There's a New Leaf speedrunner who you'll meet in a moment that once said, "Korean is OP." And he's absolutely right. Throughout the course of this July 21st run, GZ was able to muscle through the conversations with villagers at a speed that no one had ever seen before. On top of that, he found a perfect fruit just over 2 minutes into the run, eliminating the need to waste precious seconds looking for one later. When you watch the video of this run, it's clear that GZ, like Megamaster X, had mastered the movement for this category. There were almost no wasted actions. Between his movement and the save time from the faster text scrolling, GZ demolished his own world record, and the PBs of every other New Leaf speedrunner in history by posting an 803. He'd needed just one day to lower his record by 37 seconds. This was the fourth time that GZ had bested someone to take back ownership of the world record, and even though he'd been beaten several times, ultimately GZ had outlasted all of his competitors and proven himself to be the best. Simply because of his dedication to the speedrun since 2014 and his consistent excellence, GZ was the true champion of Animal Crossing New Leaf First Debt. And yet, GZ's virtuoso run wasn't perfect. Most egregiously, he'd actually picked a town name and then deleted it to input a different one. And he'd also settled for a fairly mediocre map. The door was open for someone else to clean up those mistakes and submit a faster run. Well, do you remember that anonymous speedrunner that I mentioned earlier? His name is Nick. Like Lilat R, he's Canadian. He started running the game in December of 2019 and got a sub 10 fairly easily on the 4th with the American version of New Leaf. He pronounced himself satisfied with it. However, 4 days later, he had gotten his hands on the Korean version of the game and lowered his PB to an 827. You can probably see where this is heading. A day after, on the 9th, Nick scored an 816. And then, after a couple more days of practice, he achieved a 754, a sub 8. How did Nick do it? Well, he mentioned that he had a minimal finger-moving strategy, which saved him some time. And honestly, even though it sounds hokey, it seems to have worked. Also, Nick's movement was beautiful. He got lucky with the first map he chose at the beginning of the run, and he made an inspired guess as to where the money rock was. All of it added up to a new world record, and, as of March 2021, Nick is the world record holder for Animal Crossing New Leaf First Debt. That's not quite where the story ends, though. While the race for the world record ended for a while after Nick's 754, 2020 saw a wave of new speedrunners from all corners of the globe: Germany, Brazil, Japan, and Great Britain. However, the only one to post a competitive time was Lemon's Pickrun, who achieved an 855, good for 6th place on the leaderboard, on May 5th, 2020. However, they haven't posted another run since. Nick served as a moderator for New Leaf on speedrun.com, while GZ worked on other runs, including getting a world record in the any percent DSI solo category of The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords. But the speedrunner Cold Eggman, notable for his work on other Animal Crossing games, started running the category around the beginning of 2021, and quickly set a time of 7:43 on January 4th, beating Nick by almost 10 seconds. This touched off a new race for the record over the next 3 days, which resulted in Nick and GZ setting new personal bests, with Nick ultimately scoring a 7:41 to come out on top. Most recently, he lowered the best time to 7:36 on January 31st, but it's anybody's guess as to who will set the next world record. So what does the future hold for New Leaf speedrunning? Nick has the record, but based on GZ's prior body of work, I wouldn't count against him getting the best time again in the future. GZ's commitment shows that this is his game until he says otherwise. And the runtime can go lower. There are still optimizations to be made. Will a sub-7 run ever happen? It would be foolish to count out the possibility. After all, people once said that Alpharad's 919 would never be beaten, and here we stand today. The story of New Leaf speedrunning is, in a sense, the story of all of us. Humans trying to do something remarkable in the face of overwhelming odds. The remarkable work that Alpharad, and Megamaster X, and Lilad R, GZ, and Cold Eggman and Nick have done is to take a video game known for its slow pace and turn it into a fun and exciting corner in the world of speedrunning. They've pursued excellence, and that's one of the most noble things a human can do.